But anyway, we're super happy to see so many faces here today. This is the third in our seminar series by Design++. We are a team of 5 people organizing this. So Andreas, Fabio, who are the 2 co-leads of the Immersive Design Lab, Daniela, Nijet, and myself. And we are very happy to have tonight Professor Sarah Kenderdine. We also have our next seminar series coming up the 23rd of May, which is going to be Professor Bernd Bickel, which we also recommend you to kind of put and save the date in your calendar. But tonight it's my great pleasure to introduce Professor Sarah Kenderdine, a pioneer in digital museology. Her work blends art, science, and technology to reimagine how we interact with cultural heritage. She's a professor at the EPFL in Lausanne, and she leads the Innovative Laboratory for Experimental Museology. And as if that wasn't enough, she's also the director and the lead curator at the EPFL Pavilion and the corresponding fellow of the British Academy. She has curated over 90 major exhibitions worldwide and received numbers of international awards for her work. And today we have the great privilege of hosting her here at the seminar series, and she will share her insights in a talk titled Computational Museology, Art and Science in the Age of Experience. So this really gives us a unique opportunity to learn from her vast experience in blending experimental curatorship with contemporary aesthetics and digital humanism, exploring how machine intelligence and data curation intersect. Professor Sarah Kenderdine is a leader in the global conversation in the digital future in museology, and her work has opened up new possibilities for engaging visitors in the world of science and art. Her work challenged our perception and invites us to rethink the boundaries of art and science in creating meaningful cultural experiences. So please let me welcome Professor Sarah Kenderdine. Thank you.
Great, so thank you very much. To Design++, the whole team, but it's a great pleasure to be here. And as mentioned, the title, Computational Museology, Art and Science in the Age of Experience. The first part, Computational Museology, is a research framework that we're developing in our laboratory. It provides a scaffold that unites machine intelligence with data curation, ontologies, so the world of knowledge, with visualization, and communities of publics and practitioners with embodied interaction through immersive interfaces. And cultural museology is designed to empower cultural organizations to link all forms of culture and materialities, objects, knowledge systems, representation, and participation. To start to explore the age of experience, though, we need to step back in time. And it was the former CEO of Intel, Brian Krasnick, who declared in 2014, we're in the midst of a transformation from a world of screens and devices to a world of immersive experiences. However, media art history, media archaeology, informs us that what he was really observing was hundreds of years of development in these prosthetic architectures of the senses. From the Kaiser panorama to the sensorama, the emergence of immersive environments coincided with the sublimation of curatorial praxis inside machines and represented the greatest challenge to the passive viewer since the invention of the roller coaster. So for 25 years, I've been designing interactive frameworks for public engagement with cultural heritage. Initially, I was located in a university where in a museum where we started to build these large-scale systems for the mass public. I then started to sort of gravitate towards universities because we needed more computer graphics firepower, really, and more integration expertise. I co-established the Applied Laboratory for Interactive Visualization and Embodiment at the Science Park in Hong Kong with 8 large-scale systems, returned to Australia to build the Expanded Perception and Interaction Centre at UNSW. Here, what you're looking at on the right-hand side of the screen is a small 7-meter diameter panorama. It's comprised of 56 projectors and a 29 computer cluster at 120 million pixels in 3D. So it's about 60 times the resolution of a head-mounted display. It's designed to solve visualization problems for complexity in big data in the humanities and also in the sciences. Our partner laboratory in Hong Kong just built the world's first 360-degree LED 3D system, and then the Laboratory of Experimental Museology at EPFL. We have 12 large-scale systems, and they offer us strategies for multi-sensory engagement, emphasizing human-to-human as well as human-to-machine interaction, and give us powerful ways to reformulate narrative in a digital context. We are harnessing technologies that have unprecedented abilities to capture the world around us, and I'm sure you're familiar with many of them. Laser scanning to collect billions of points to represent places, such as these heads at Mount Rushmore, scanned by the Scottish 10. We can create precious objects in 3D and peer inside to see what was previously unseen. We can capture art through linear line scanning and camera array photography in a way that allows us to zoom into the tiniest brushstroke and reveal more than the naked eye can see. We recently acquired this robotic arm for super high fidelity, color accurate photogrammetry, and we used advanced machine learning in our work as well. This is a model of Nefertari's tomb collected in only 1 day of photography by one cameraman with one camera. And machine learning is used to transform that model of 4,000 images into something for our 360-degree 3D system at 40 million pixels. And the fidelity, of course, of this material is increasing daily. And another area that I work on a lot, I might not go into today, is intangible cultural heritage and various forms of motion capture and motion over time analytics. We'll see how far we get. So in my laboratory, I have a number of research strands in the cultural heritage field, but I just wanted to point out that we also work extensively in scientific visualization. So this is a real-time simulation using real data from the tokamak system at EPFL. So it's a collaboration with Eurofusion, and we run that in both for the Eurofusion community, and the next stage of this visualization project is to create tools for this community beyond the spectacular. We're really at a time with the advances in computer graphics that this all becomes possible to compute in real time, to compute the trajectories of these particles in real time. We worked on building the largest data set of the universe, bringing 7 data sets together with the Astrophysics Lab at EPFL. And we've also done work with the former Human Brain Project. This is visualization inside a mouse brain. One of the other projects I've been directing at EPFL, which really speaks to the Art&Science's EPFL pavilions, it's an amplifier for art and science in society. And in participation with diverse communities, the pavilions blends experimental curatorship and contemporary aesthetics with open science, digital humanism, and emerging technologies. And just to give a quick insight into some of the more recent shows, Nature of Robotics, An Expanded Field, Deep Fakes, Art in its Double, Cosmos Archaeology, Explorations in Time and Space, Lighten Up on Biology and Time, and at the moment, Cyber Physical Architecture in Real Time. The upcoming show, for which we don't have a poster yet, is Musica Ex Machina, Machines Thinking Musically About Algorithms and Music, opening in September. But after that enormous preamble, I thought we could just step through some of these topics. And we will start with computational archives. So we live in a world at the moment that's really, the tools for searching in archives are bound within grammatocentrism. So you have to have expert knowledge and you type in text. And this is severely limiting the access that people have to different types of archives. So we address that. We also address the fact that linear moving image archives are huge in volume, hundreds of thousands of hours of videos. So how do you give public access to that kind of material? And so those are the sort of problems that we work on. And we believe that the computational revolution offers a paradigm shift for museums, where archives are a new terrain upon which curators will reckon with heritage materiality and be able to extract and define fine-grained archival ontologies and narratives. So that's what we're busy building. So I'm going to step way back in time so we can build up to what we're doing now. This is T-Visionarium from 2008, developed at iCinema Center, 24 hours of free-to-air broadcast TV footage. It's taken offline, camera angle is changed, is computed automatically, and a cut is then made in the film. So we end up with a database of 25,000 clips, and they're about 4 seconds each. If one was to do this with cinema that takes so much longer, the clips would be longer. 4 guys were hired to sit in a dark room and hand tag each one of the 4-second clips. Emotion, expression, physicality, speed, scene structure. Most of these tags couldn't be computed by a machine today anyway. So it's a subjective tagging scenario. And it includes things like listening and telephoning. Gender, color, these are more easy to detect today through computer vision type techniques. So what happens is that 500 simultaneous streams of video are distributed across the 360-degree screen, and then you're able to operate on the database. For film purposes, just one guy in there, any member of the public, and every time he clicks on an image, it reorganizes the data set, so everything that's semantically similar is on one side, and everything that's most dissimilar is behind you. We talk about aesthetic transcription or pan-aesthetics, the way media transform in these processes of remediation. He's going to choose color just to demonstrate this. This is actually a luminosity tag, so it's based on the brightness of the image. And clicks on all the fiery red stuff, brings all that to one side. What appears behind you is all the black and whites. So all the black and whites or low luminosity images are titles of the movies, credits, and this kind of thing. You can add clips together, so you're recombining the narratives of different movies, or recombinatory narrative, as we call it. You can obviously save and play. It's like mashup culture. And there's lots of analogies to be described here in the way that people are able to surf large-scale distributed archives like this. So addressing a different problem, most museums have only a fraction of the collection on display. British Museum has 0.4%, This museum has 0.8% of its collection on display, 16 million objects. This is an export from the content management system. Took 15 minutes to extract the data from the database. We use the metadata to glue all these images together across 18 themes. It brings together social history, natural sciences, and indigenous material. You can zoom into images. It creates a word automatically from the description. You can access the original record. They're temporally distributed in the 360, and then you can travel in the Z-axis as far as the eye can see. So really this is about opening up the possibilities, a kind of serendipitous curator machine for connecting these different objects together in this kind of space. These different silos are brought together in this, and it addresses that problem that there are three, in fact, distinct, non-correlated data sets in here, and it's the linkages that make it most powerful. So then back to moving image archives. This is a more recent work, Jazz Luminaries, and it's based on EPFL's seminal Jazz Archive digitization project. And the archive is a UNESCO Memory of the World archive. It contains 11,000 hours of video. We took just the jazz component, so jazz and all of its subgenres, as opposed to rock and pop, which also appears in that archive. So the neural net type image that you see there, each node is an artist. The link strength between the nodes is defined by the number of times one artist plays with another artist. So at the very, very center of that spaghetti is somebody who's hugely collaborative. Does anybody know who that might be? That shows your jazz knowledge. That's the problem. B.B. King is actually at the center of that. He played more often at Montreux with more people than anybody else. But if you're on the edge, you could also just be young, right? Or not been to Montreux very often. We show the same archive on the campus, the full archive, and you can search for people in that archive. And by analyzing that search, we know that there are only 10 people, 10 artists that people search for. So how do you explode that and give people access? So in this case, you're lying under the dome, you've got a spherical ball in your hands, and on the ball is one button. And the search paradigm is akin to tuning a radio. It's searching by listening, so hearing what you like drives the design to unfold. So you're listening to all the samples, then you're listening to all the songs by that performer, just snippets, and then you're able to enter the full song with just one button on the interface. It's the 1970s kind of retro graphics.
Sail on, my little honeybee, sail on.
These are all songs by a particular performer or a group, and then you're into the full song from the beginning. So now we have a new project, which is Narratives from the Long Tail. It's an FNS Synergia grant, and we have 200,000 hours of archival video from 4 major collections in Europe. And machine learning and computer vision is used to create narrative coherence across the spatial, temporal, social, affective, and aesthetic vectors in these massive archives. So we're creating these 360-degree narrative visualization engines, and they're a scalable and participatory engagement model to situate audiences and their experiences at the center of knowledge production, while also stimulating innovation in archival practices. And one of the major problems that all these moving image archives face is the paucity of metadata. So in fact, computer vision and vector extraction are one of the ways to expand that metadata and to fold that back into what archives are actually doing themselves. So it's the IOC, International Olympic Collection. This is the iMuseum, the Mutoscope collection, the oldest films in the world, actually shot at what would be the equivalent of IMAX quality today. We have all of RTS and the Montreux that I mentioned before. Stereo Spectacular is another example to leverage vast archives of historic stereographic images found in collections throughout the world. And in this case, it's the Universal Exhibition 1867. So Napoleon III, the French emperor, instigated this exposition in Paris. It was designed for this giant, innovative iron building and included over 100 national pavilions in a vast park on the Champ de Mars. The fair marked a turning point, and that's why it's of interest to us in visual culture. So far from being a traditional display of manufactured goods and natural resources, it mobilized the contemporary technologies of the day in the service of history and museography to create an immersive visitor experience that was a sensation at the time. And this giant elliptical palace was arranged as a kind of panoptical machine, and it brought together 50,000 exhibitors from 32 countries, and an estimated 11 million people went in 8 months. So we conjoin historical research that we are doing together with the historic technologies of vision that were mobilized in this fair. And we now have a collection of 1,000 stereographic plates from various collectors and institutions worldwide to create this new work. So these are what stereo plates often look like. We do rectification, denoising, descaling, defect correction, upscaling, so on and so forth. They're often very degraded, so it's fine when you have glass plate negatives, but these are often very degraded. We do a modest amount of recoloring, which I think you can see on that screen, on occasion. And we're developing this work for 2 exhibitions, one in Washington and one in Paris. The Washington one is because this is the moment that Americans came onto the world stage and said, look at all our fancy machinery. We are a superpower. It was just post-Civil War. And this is obviously a stereographic system, so most of these have not been seen since the era of the traveling cards and the stereo show. Each image has been geolocated. There's lots of dupes in this early render. This exhibition isn't due till 2026, so we're at the early stages of this in this reconstitution. So there are many interesting things in computer graphics now that allow or hint at the reconstruction of 3D scenes from stereographic plates and so on. So we have a PhD working specifically on those technologies. It will be accompanied by full sonification, which comes from commentators of that particular show from all over the world, often very negative and descriptive global voices. So if we start to look at what makes up embodied experience, we can show these works, which are very simple, but actually very powerful. And this one, Look Up Mumbai, it's for the Prince of Wales Museum in Mumbai. And it was adopted as the artistic epicenter of an exploration that specifically focuses on the ceiling architecture of Mumbai's heritage and contemporary buildings and transforms them into an urban celestial imaginary. So Mumbai's architectural heritage is unrivaled in India. It has one of the largest representations of grand neo-Gothic style architecture, numerous examples of Indo-Saracenic architecture, and the world's largest concentration of Art Deco buildings. We shot 168 gigapixel images throughout the city. That's the Baujilad Museum, some contemporary buildings, the then new Terminal 2 Mumbai Airport. We took the full dome from my lab and we put it under the 60-foot ceiling, the dome ceiling of the museum. And this allowed about 2,000 people a day to come and rediscover their city with fresh eyes. Open to all, it gave new perspectives on the many spaces that are socially exclusive despite their public heritage status. The application is running in real time, so it randomly selects any image and then creates a unique transition between one image and the next. So you will always resolve to the same 160 odd images, but the way you get there will always be different. So we know that a domed structure, more generally, has been used by cultures throughout the world, often to encapsulate sacred environments, from Jain stupas to Buddhist temples to Islamic mosques and Christian cathedrals. Dome constructions are places of ritual communion and transcendence, and the concept of an experiential domed environment, the digital one, emerged from attempts to simulate the spherical gestalt of the human visual field and was designed to exploit and extend sensory perception. In collaboration with the Anagu elders in Australia and the National Museum, we created 2 dome shows traveling Kangarangalpa, the song lines of the 7 sisters. So this song line is a travel narrative, and it describes architectural environmental features and landscape. And this is one of the most prevailing meta-narratives in ancient mainland Australia, but it had never ever been told in the public domain before. There's a very traumatic history, as I'm sure you're aware, of colonial contact in Australia, which makes custodians very reluctant to bring this knowledge to someone like the National Museum. But the Anagu elders felt that their songline was at risk and that this was a strategy. So it was a 7-year negotiation to be able to do this work and to bring it into the digital domain. The Matu artists who depict this songline, it's a female songline, chose the full dome system, and they did so because it, for them, expresses simultaneously the sphere of the world around us, sky above, ground below, and enveloping viewers as they lie supine, as these creation beings travel across Australia and then fly up into the night sky. So we imaged a cave which had never ever had a single photograph taken of it before. So this is a full photogrammetric model of Cave Hill. And gigapixel images, drone-based panoramas, and time-lapse photography, as well as ambisonics. And the second work we did with the Matu artists involved their artwork. So here, these ancestral beings are recreated as jumpy figures, so-called jumpy figures. This is a ceremony which is singing them off the land because they have been collected by the National Museum. So they go from that nice lively scene to what looks like a morgue. Most museums are like this, ripping objects out of context, but it did enable us to make photogrammetric models of them. The artists painted a whole series of fisheye images, fisheye drawings, if you like, that were then remapped to the dome that were depicting the narrative. And this led to a whole series of interpretations and then simple animations for the full dome. So the work itself was, as I mentioned, this really long collaboration. It was also a watershed in curatorial relations between Indigenous people and the national government, if you like. So it was also a collaboration with my laboratory where we were able to produce this work and to lend them a full dome system through a grant process shared with other museums. So I see it as a responsibility of a laboratory like mine to support the GLAM sector to innovate through these various strategies. So it won numerous awards. It's touring all over the world, and the museum, of course, is now empowered to buy its own full dome system for, $750,000. So helping them innovate had a good outcome. So iconoclasm, looting, warfare, natural disasters, and not so natural disasters such as mass tourism and climatic catastrophes act on cultural heritage today with frequent devastation, increasingly frequent. So here's an old work that addresses some of the issues that are at stake in the virtual representation of heritage. It's the Gobi Desert in northernmost China, nexus of the Silk Road. It's a World Heritage Site, and 492 caves are carved inside this escarpment. 45,000 square meters of mural paintings and painted frescoes, over 2,000 stucco statues, crafted by Buddhist monks over a period of 1,000 years. This sublime art treasury is like nothing else in the Chinese Buddhist world. Now, most of these caves are closed to the public, and the digital is the only mode of visitation in this era characterized by heritage at risk. Enormous preservation effort underway there. There are about between 60 and 90, it's hard to tell, full-time photographers. They do camera array photography. They stitch it all together in situ. They laser scan separately, and we bring the stuff together. So it takes them 3 months to image a single cave. And the Pure Land projects were designed to activate the kinesthetic spatial responses of their viewers in relation to this cave and offer us important insights into how such interfaces operate in the museological domain. We did 5 works, but I'll just show you this one in detail. So it was originally conceived for Art Basel in Hong Kong, and we printed the wireframe from the laser scan on the walls of the exhibition booth at 1:1 scale, and then you're navigating inside that virtual world using this tablet. It's like a window on the world. Has 3 noteworthy qualities: the way that it harnesses socialization around a single screen. It's not about everybody having their own device. A museological experience is a social experience. It's an interface for young kids, middle-aged ladies, grandmother and grandchild. Grandmother abandons the grandchild and takes off of the screen. So non-ageist systems that work for any age group. And the third most noteworthy quality of this one was the way in which the wife pulls an iPad out of her handbag and she's filming her husband's experience as if they were really there. It was reformed as a full dome experience for the World Economic Forum in Dalian, live interactive tours by myself and an eminent Chinese monk, and here again in 360 3D. So the works have been seen by millions of people worldwide, and it's the malleability of a single data set to transform across all of these platforms that is its intrinsic quality, quite apart from the whole thing that one might talk about in terms of the aura arising from the entanglement of the real and the virtual. So decades of computer science and engineering have revolutionized the tenets of verisimilitude and representation. And this project, it's a Swiss project, the Terapixel Panorama project. It concerns a Swiss national icon. Does everybody know what it is? Nope. Okay, it's the painted panorama representing the Swiss Battle of Confederation from 1476. It was painted by a German painter with 40 people in his atelier in 1893. So it's a 19th century representation of a medieval battle. So it's inaccurate, we could say. But the painting itself is very significant as part of the creation of a nation state in Switzerland and of Swiss identity. So it was only ever shown in Zurich, at Utokai, and in Geneva. A total of 7 years. It came at the tail end of the great panorama movement, painted panorama movement. The advent of cinema came along, and it was the end of the painted panorama, complete failure in the business model. It was rediscovered in the 1990s after it was abandoned, and a conservation effort was mounted. It took 6 years to clean the painting and to restore it. Then it was re-erected in a panoramic screen, and it was floated on the Lake of Merton in a box built by the French architect Jean Nouvel for the Swiss National Expo in 2002. Afterwards, they'd hoped to relocate the box onto the shore and have a permanent installation, but it was again returned to obscurity. So after 20 years, we rescued it from the military storage facility where it had been languishing. So the full length is 100 meters long. It's in 3 sections. Each one is 10 meters high. Each one weighs 1 ton. And we moved it, or got the military to move it to the laboratory. And we worked with a conservation team. We did a full conservation assessment. We built this conservation rig, spare rolls for rolling the rolls to the rolls, and so on. We weren't doing restoration, but just conservation and observation. We then used IX8 phase 1, 150 megapixel camera, sponsored by phase 1. We built an imaging rig for the platform, and from there we took 128,000 images and we stitched it together in a 1.6 trillion pixel image at 1000 dpi. So it turns out to be the highest, the largest digital image ever created. So it's not rocket science, although we did have to write some software to help with the hyperbolic nature of the image itself. Means you can zoom in to the materiality of the painting. We have a PhD working extensively in what digital humanists do, which is ontologies and mapping all of the elements in the painting automatically and being able to create these queryable interfaces for more for experts. And then the other aspect of the project is the 360 version. So super fine resolution allows you to zoom in. And we have, I think, 9 exhibitions now in various panoramic systems. We're working with a Chinese company called Centraum and a Swiss synthetic smell company. And actually, I have all the smells now sitting in the fridge, and on Friday I get to do the smell test. But what are the smells of? So it's blood, sweat, goats, horses, and so on and so forth. So what this system does is it's a linear broadcast system, which we've now hacked to be an interactive framework. So it will release these smells in real time as people navigate inside the panorama. We're working with reenactment fighters. These are the Italians, probably the best team of fighters in Europe. They reconstruct fight scenes from medieval manuscripts. This is actually in the ETHZ system, volumetric video capture facility, and we're doing volumetric video and also motion capture. We obviously have various strategies to engage with a panorama like this, and Robert, this is what we were talking about before, is the difference between the way a magnifying glass works versus super zoom. And we will go for the super zoom because the magnifying glass will inevitably kick you out of the reference in which you're in. This experiment here is actually a multi-user system, so if two people come together with their magnifying glass, it increases the resolution by 2 or 3 or 4 times, depending on how many people collaborate. We're doing lots of fun things. This is a text-to-image generator project, so what you see on the screen is actually happening on your tablet. You type in things and you're able to start to augment the landscape or the battle scenes within the image. So in a typical prompt scenario. An exhibition that really dealt with these topics was for both pavilions at EPFL pavilions. And if you'll permit me, I'll actually read the curatorial blurb and the images will play kind of asynchronously. So today's technologies coalesce to replicate cultural artifacts with ultimate fidelity, simultaneously as algorithms and computer vision reperform and reprocess the digitally visible. They're exposing the optical unconscious of art, calling us to re-examine, once again, objecthood itself. Remediated through participatory interfaces such as mixed, augmented, and virtual realities, the exhibition created new performative platforms for the complex archetypes that emerge out of computational practices as they intersect with art heritage. Through 21 installations, the exhibition was equally focused on affirming and activating visitors' sensory experiences, while also grappling with the critical implications of digital materialities that objects possess in post-original form. Cultural deepfakes, as I came to call them, have manifold significance. With its propensity for peripheral vision, machine learning has amplified the possible futures for curatorial and artistic practices, antagonizing outdated notions of authority, authenticity, and access. These practices are generating perpetually new archival entities concurrently formed and formless. The encryption of digital counterparts in place of originals is exploding systems and codes of ownership, custodianship, and repatriation. The accumulation and exploitation of digital patrimonial and cultural capital by technological elites unnervingly reenacts colonial constructs. Synchronously, new forms of cryptographic control, such as non-fungible tokens, are being enabled for the network circulation of arts. But promoting the blockchain as a potential dominion of arbitrary value is the hallmark of the intensification of late capitalism's newest investment for its enmeshed cultural objects rather than their depropriation in the commons. Deepfakes art and its double as a cumulative narrative that embarks on these cross-cutting themes, traversing the simulacrum, mirror worlds, digital twins, cryptocurrency, and machine intelligence, while engaging with those age-old issues of mimesis, reenactment, memory, and colonization. The exhibition's installations cycle us through some of the antitheses around which the history of art has been circumscribed, and as postmodernism recedes, taking with it the assumed meaning of things, cultural deepfakes have become a central pivot for this dialectic. And this exhibition is now the subject of a book, which will be finished next month, Deepfakes, a Critical Lexicon of Digital Museology, to be published by Routledge. One of the works for this show, Double Truth. So with this work, it takes 15 seminal sculptures from a different project, which I might introduce, and visitors are rotating this human scale viewing platform, and in circumambulation from left to right generates a dynamic temporal sequence to reveal each of these 15 sacred sculptures one by one. Reversing the platform meanwhile reveals unexpected materialities. Icons melt, fragment, and refold in a series of computer graphic transformations and parametric visualizations. The geometries of the digital transcend the originating visible and material properties. It's a meditation on the two truths from Mahayana Buddhism, which is about the mundane and the absolute. Their acoustic realm is also augmented. These are ethnographic music recordings, rare recordings coming from the different Southeast Asian nations that are represented by these sculptures, many of them national treasures. So you can see here, by reversing the platform again, you reinstate the object. So all that material came from a much bigger project, which I'm not actually going to discuss, but just to say it's a permanent museum in Foguanshan Monastery. 2 million visitors in its first year, and it's charting the spread of Buddhism from India through Southeast Asia, up into China, down into Korea and Japan, and it's 5 years of fieldwork documenting thousands of sites and locations. And it will now become a new museum complex at Nagarjunakonda, which is a new stupa which has been built, inaugurated by the Dalai Lama in Telangana state. And a museum complex will be built for that. We are also busy with a new SNF project, digital twins, renegotiating identity and translocated heritage in a global age. This is about smart contracts, blockchain, high fidelity digital twins, and involves over 100 seminal sculptures in India, which we're currently capturing at the moment, and a touring exhibition series. So we're looking at issues of the digital and how it works in repatriation, but also in the recontextualization of cultural memory. So spatial computing or augmented reality offer new strategies of interpretation for museums. And this work, it was just a bit of fun. It's based on Leonardo da Vinci's painting of the Virgin of the Rocks. And Renaissance art actually actualizes the painterly discovery of perspectival space, and with the ensuing ability to represent the imaginary that extends beyond the surface of the canvas, so 3D space into distant horizons. There are two versions of this painting, one in the National Gallery, one in the Louvre in Paris. And we cut out on a single sheet of metal the protagonists, Angel Gabriel and so on, at the front of the scene. And then visitors step inside, much like you saw with the Dongwan piece. But this is where the whole world is created out of computer graphics to the scene behind. It's only when you bring your tablet into the cave that you actually see the cave on the screen. So it's a big modeling job to model all of the characteristics in that scene. Obviously, it's an artistic interpretation. So Open-Science was a work for EPFL's 50th birthday party. So there are 50 lockers for storing your bags in the entrance of EPFL pavilions, 50 lockers, 50 years. We had to make it work somehow. So it's like a contemporary Wunderkammer. And we worked with 50 different laboratories. We got an iconic object from each laboratory. And what happens is on your screen, the locker door opens and an object of science is inside. These were all animated by different people. They're very idiosyncratic. Obviously, there's a QR code on the wall that leads you to all the didactic information that you might want on each one of these. And as you can see, they're real lockers for storing babies and bags and stuff. So Safe House was a work along similar lines developed during COVID, and it was simulating being entrapped in your apartment and all the exercises that people were doing. These are generally older characters. We took the models from the internet, we randomly assign over 100 motion capture sequences to them. And this is the multi-user version of this work in the 360. You're opening this locker door, that's the COVID virus printed on it, as you can see. And wherever you look, the locker door will open to see what these poor inhabitants are doing. So we're doing quite a lot of work, some of which I can't show yet, but in text-to-image generator, and this is a very early experiment. But what was interesting about it is, I think that's a really short video, but so people come in, they have their own tablet, they have quite big egos, they all want to create the perfect image. But invariably, very quickly, they're all collaborating on a scene. So it's a social dynamic which is really powerful. And this is a project that we're developing quite a lot further under the rubric of future cinema systems. I mentioned intangible cultural heritage. I'll just give you a little insight into what this is. Intangible heritage is reliant on tacit or embodied knowledge systems. And Hong Kong is an extraordinary reservoir of intangible heritage, primarily of the Hakka people, and it includes some of the most prominent martial artists in the world. So Jackie Chan, Gordon Liu, Hong Kong cinema, this is all in danger of becoming lost. So we've been working with these Kung Fu masters for 13 years now, just finishing a PhD in this topic, and motion capture for many years, and different forms of documentation, both of rituals and practices. There are about 23 styles that have been documented of empty hand and weapon sequences. We have done 13 exhibitions, I think, worldwide. Simple things, pose matching machine, rereading mocap's hidden traces is about reenacting the gesture on display. This is Lam Sai Wing, so he was the first Kung Fu master to use photography in studio practice. We have hand drawings of him. We took his great-great-grandnephew, put him in a motion capture studio, got him performing iron wire boxing, bring the two together, a model that we make of Lam Sai Wing and the motion capture standing life-size in the galleries. So quite a weird archival document. It's a chi building exercise, this one. This is Reactor. It's a 6-sided rear projected stereo system. You're looking inside to see the master perform from any perspective. And then we do a range of motion over time analytics, typical things like this is speed on the body at any moment in time. This is a typical particle simulation. In the theoretical sense, we talk about gestural haptic writing, and that the continuous topological model that motion capture provides us allows for the easier retainment of the effective qualities of movement in a museological domain. And then, of course, extensive motion graphics, increasingly possible in real time, or these were in the day when they were pre-rendered. So overall, the museum is one of my favorite quotes, is a theater of anamorphic and autoscopic dramaturgy, a place in which it's not so easy to tell which is the spider and which the web, which the machinery and which the operator. It is a place at the center of our world, our modernity, in the image of which those worlds continue to proliferate. He's a museum theorist. So if we return to the museum world, I just said I would offer some insights into some of the exhibitions that we've been doing. Cosmos Archaeology, Explorations in Time and Space. This was the one where we took the 7 big data sets of the universe and combined them all together in real time. And it's about transforming these abstract data sets into formats that are accessible to human senses while still encouraging cognitive insights. So we're harnessing the advanced technologies of imaging, visualization, and the visual arts, and to take us on an interactive and immersive journey, offering a portal into new perspectives on our contemporary relationship with the universe. And we're trying to break down this artificial gap between scientific rigor and visual experience, acting not only as tools for science, but also as gateways for the public to enter the vastness of the cosmos. So it was a collaboration between my laboratory and astrophysics. This was the big 360-degree system, which was transformed then into the dynamic universe, fully interactive. You could travel 27 orders of magnitude. It's an active stereo system with this 6-off interface that you can see here. We were able to create a whole series of voyages through the data sets and capture those in other formats. We worked together with the old imaging projects plug plates. These are from the Sloan Digital Sky Survey, the star mapping sculpture. This was created by a kinetic artist to evoke the subtle mechanics of the universe. These plug plates are now obsolete because Lastro and their collaborators have produced these enormous 5,000 robotic eyes with fiber optic cables to do exactly the same sort of imaging. Space-time elastic was designed to simulate the phenomenon of gravitational lensing, distorting light induced by massive bodies such as the sun, stars, and black holes. Again, this is generated in real time out of the model of the universe that we created. Cosmic Collisions, a multi-user gameplay with all of the NASA material. It's a 4-person game, and simply you're competing to get your image up on the screen while lying supine, as you should, under the night sky. We developed the full model for the Square Kilometre Array Observatory, both in South Africa, but also the West Australian site has now just been added. So that again is a 6 degree of freedom, large screen stereo game thing. With all the models are coming directly from the Square Kilometre Array project. We work together with RTS and their archive of Claude Nicollier, the Swiss astronaut. And so we have 400 videos of him, a temporal sequence, and we created this linear navigator system. It's a temporal navigation tool. And Space Heroes, as it was called, enables you to browse in this archive. It's unedited footage. We didn't try to do a big job on the RTS quality. And if you can click 1999, the whole system moves along the wall. Claude, when he first saw this, just randomly clicked on an image, and it was him in space and his family on Earth. Christmas Day, 20 minutes they were given, connected by satellite, and he just burst into tears. He'd never seen the footage, so it was this incredible moment. This is all real-time visualization of space junk and satellites through time. It's called the dark cloud of debris. The guy who has released this data set, who maintains this access, works for the military, but he does it in his spare time because he believes that the public should have access to public data. I mean, to this pollution data that's clouding out the universe. So space junk was a real, a deep topic for us in this show, partly related to one of the EPFL spin-offs called Clear Space, who were at that time developing satellites who could grab space junk and push it out of orbit, and it would burn up in the atmosphere. We worked with the whole narrative of space junk, but visitors also contributed their own space junk. And there was a large cabinet where these objects, such as this one, were displayed. They were also invited to draw their own space junk. And we quickly got 7,000 of these drawings. They're also displaying in real time in the galleries. We visualized satellite and space junk data in real time. In these sonic installations, we also used all the recordings on the Perseverance rover on Mars for another sonic work. We had artworks also. This is a ceramic material, which is the same as the material on Venus. And it brings together the renders of the topological surface of Venus with an artistic ceramicist's work. And this one is a moving work of painted canvases, actually, and it's from aperture radar imaging of the NASA image to Venus. Interestingly enough, or perhaps you already know this, but all of the place names on Venus are named after women, real women or mythological women. And these were all listed on the wall. So it's opening this week, actually. I'm soon to get on a plane to Shanghai to the Astronomy Museum. And then it will open at Tsinghua University Art Museum in Beijing. Then the Science Gallery in Bangalore, the new Science Gallery in Bangalore. So it has very popular. Perhaps I'll leave it there. There's many more exhibitions to show, but I know we started late, and yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. What a... You're going from space down to caves, and it's. But I first of all want to kind of lead the stage to the audience. If you have any questions, we are running a little bit over. So, is there any questions from the audience that you are eager, or is everyone kind of eager to have the apero already? Yeah. Okay. Please.
So thanks for a very inspiring talk. I can't help but wondering, with access to cheaper hardware, when museums become obsolete, when people download stuff and put on Apple Vision Pro, and how do you see in that context the future of museums? And do you think they're going to have a tougher time? I mean, now this is great archiving and incredible experiences, but I'm really kind of struggling with the question of what's next.
Yeah, sure. So I'm really interested, although it's not easy necessarily unless I show you full exhibitions of cultural heritage material that we build, but the juxtaposition between real original artifacts and these digital amplifiers. So I'm very interested in the tension between the two, not the replacement of one. And it's the whole history of replication. You can't have an originating, authentic object until you have its copy. Yeah. So the whole history of museums have been filled with digital twins and copying and replication. Initially, you know, Henry Cole, at the V&A in London, he said, they made a convention, it was signed by all these princes in Europe, and it's the convention for mechanically reproducing art, yeah? And they were making scale plaster casts. This is now the cast court at the V&A, and it is by far the most visited place at the V&A. So people are visiting copies, yeah, which is interesting, but they're copies from all over the world. So this ability to show what you can't see, that we can no longer travel to, that we have no access to, for sure. But the other aspect of museological life that I kind of emphasized is the social and the bringing together of people in these experiences. So do museums become obsolete, or is it social spaces expanding with all these other different experiences? For quite a long time now, the head-mounted display revolution just doesn't do it for the fidelity of the types of data sets we're creating. So we're building big machines for social experience. I don't think the museums become obsolete. I just think that the nature of authority around objects is changing, and it's doing that in response to things like the repatriation debates. I mean, there are objects moving all over the world right now. India just received hundreds of objects from all over the place, from the Metropolitan, from et cetera, that had been looted, yeah? And the digital has a real role to play in there as well. It's not about giving people back digital objects. It's about how the digital object is used in negotiation, actually, of cultural importance. So I think that while we're dealing, I mean, some of this is game world, right? So it's different. But when you're talking about high fidelity digital twins, we've got very powerful erratic experiences that we can build that amplify the original in whatever way. And so the original never goes away in this equation.
Any other questions that are burning in the back?
Thank you very much for your lecture. I have a question regarding architecture. What would you think are some unique challenges that exist in the virtual museography or museology of architecture?
Yeah, funny you should say that. So I went to, I was giving some lectures in Madrid last week, and I was co-billed with the lady that was head of the Architecture Biennale in Venice over a 30-year period. And it was exactly the challenge of being able to portray architecture in a museological setting. That is the place, the Architectural Biennale is the place where they grapple with that challenge. And for years, they oscillate between, depending on who the Biennale director is, they oscillate between these, okay, so we've made models, we'll put models in architectural space. We'll blow up architecture so it's out of scale but represents elements of that architecture, and so on and so forth. We deal with the materiality of architecture, not the form, etc. So I think there are a number of strategies, and if I take my colleague here, Robert, and his team, with these, I guess, hyper BIM model, yeah, in his case, heritage BIM model, is how they are augmented with all this kind of information, and how do you make that accessible and interesting to the public? So architecture is often a few light years ahead of everybody else because you're dealing with digital models now a lot. So you have a ready source in which to expose architecture in a game type world. But architecture is not just that. It's much like a real object. It's a lot to do with the materiality of it and how you convey that in a digital but museological space. Don't know if that's helpful. Different strategies. I think that what hasn't been written, I don't think, is a history of their architecture biennale. And I was asking her about, so where are the archives, right? So the Architecture Biennale has an archive, which they closely guard. But of course, it's filled with the philosophy of the architects who directed the shows. And I think it's a really interesting history to look at the shifts that it took over that time. Yeah. We'll see what happens next, right? Carlo Ratti is the director of the next Biennale.
Any other questions, or are we? I guess I just have one last question, and it's how do you archive your own project?
So in big scale media art, so it doesn't get collected. So we're not in a commercial space for digital art. And the way in which we might archive, let's say the ZKM in Karlsruhe, big media arts place, is we do extensive documentation. We write really deep descriptions of what we intend and what is going on. So both a philosophical framing, but also a very didactic framing. We have all the original source material. It can always be, so the philosophy we take is it can always be recoded to emulate the original, and hardware can be rebuilt. There are purists out there who want to run everything on originating hardware. We didn't take that approach, but in media archaeology and media archiving, this is really a thing. The original machine is the one. But we have, works that, how you preserve the integrity of the aesthetics in a work. So we have a work, a Samuel Beckett work, Maglite torches. You're looking at this world of computer-generated humans, and they're all naked, and it was pre any of the game engines you guys know about. And we were asked to rebuild it recently. And of course we have to rebuild or restage it, but we realize that the software is really not up to the task, so we have to rewrite it. And how do we keep it as kind of crummy as it was? Because that was really part of the aesthetic. It was a Beckett work. It was very tense work. And so how you preserve those things as you morph through different technological fidelities, if you like, is an important aspect. So documentation is everything. Yeah, preservation, not so much in that sense. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. A big warm welcome to welcome. Thank you to Sarah, and then I think we should just continue with the apro and all your other questions to Sarah. Thank you so much.